right? You have Lytle Barnett. I'm going to say At the Joy is like a kind of a separate project.
Okay.
You have O'Bain and you have Windfall.
That's right.
To me, it looks like Lytle Barnett was kind of started first.
Correct.
And I think, were you with the Jackson family at the time when you met Anthony Beck and you were talking horses?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want me to go into that piece a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
That was a really fun experience. So my partner Anthony Beck, who has Graham Beck out of South Africa, he's into thoroughbred horse racing, and our family was in thoroughbred horse racing years ago in the '80s, and we had a farm out there. And Barbara Benke is into thoroughbred horse racing, so that's the kind of connection between Barbara and Anthony. And Anthony had a project here in Oregon called Angela that Ken Wright was making the product for him, and Anthony had asked Barbara if Angela could be represented by the Jackson family, through its distribution network. So Barbara asked me to kind of meet up with Anthony, and so we did this launch kickoff in 2011, I believe, at the Allison. And that's where Anthony and I met for the very first time. And I've always been a sparkling wine fanatic, and they make, Peter Fierra, the winemaker for Graham Beck, is a phenomenal, nicknamed Bubbles. He
Right.
makes amazing product.
Right.
And I thought that, what a great opportunity. Because about that time was when, Pinot Noir had always been king here in the Willamette Valley. And in 2011, Chardonnay had really started coming online. I think probably 2008 or 9, really, when Isabel, was doing amazing things with Evening Land. And Chardonnay really became, it started to get warmer, became a really great varietal, consistent, super high quality. Now all of a sudden you had 2 of the 3 components for sparkling wine, primarily, other than Meunier, which is a blender, and you can make sparkling wine without it. So my conversation with Anthony was, I think you should think about making some sparkling wine here. You know how to do it in South Africa. It's a different hemisphere. Have Peter come up here and do it, in the off season. And he just kind of nodded, and we just continued a conversation. And then, because of the Angela relationship, I had to, be in contact with Anthony fairly often for the next few months. And we started talking about, every time we would get together, I'd say,
Right.
What about that sparkling wine idea? So he called me one day, maybe 4 or 5 months later, and said, you really think I should do sparkling wine in Oregon? And I said, I think you're crazy if you don't. And he said, okay, I'm going to do it. I said, that's a good call. He goes, but you're going to partner with me 50-50. So that was it. So
Right.
That's Lytle Barnett. Barnett is his mother's maiden name. And he didn't want to put Beck on the label because it would be confusing with Graham Beck. So we did Lytle Barnett, an homage to, family names. And, really, if you look at the label, it looks, kind of French. Lytle Barnett, if you think about the houses over there, the big houses, they're usually names, or the growers or names of families. So, we really wanted to kind of pay tribute to that. And so Lytle Barnett's on the label, so it feels a little bit like it's got a little bit of a French flair to it.
Right.
And it's really, we're not trying to make, just like we do with Pinot Noir in the Valley, we don't think the Pinot Noir in Oregon is better than Pinot Noir from Burgundy. They're just different, and they're both excellent.
Correct.
And we feel the same way about sparkling wine in Oregon and the quality that's now there, compared to French champagne. I wouldn't say that we're too young to really compare ourselves to vintage French champagne, but to non-vintage, I think we're there, from a qualitative standpoint. And as you and I were discussing earlier, it's amazing to think that our first vintage of Lytle Barnett was back in 2013. But as you know, and as we talked, there's that period of time with vintage where, by the time you harvest the product, and you put it in the barrel, for its first fermentation, and then you get it into the bottle for its secondary fermentation, there's a window of about 5 years from the time you harvest the product by the time you can release the product with a minimum aging of 3 years in the bottle.
Right.
Traditional method. That's a long waiting period.
It's super long.
And so I can kind of understand. So as you can imagine, in 13, you make your first vintage, and then you don't really release the product until 19. So 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, all the money out, you're making wine. You really don't know what you have in the bottle. So it's a bit of a leap of faith. Thank God I've got a great winemaker in Andrew Davis, because I do trust him. And we had Peter, at the beginning, really kind of helping us steer us along a little bit. So, I kind of sit back and look at it and think, well, if Andrew Davis thinks the wine's good and Peter Fierra thinks the wine's good, then who am I to say it isn't? So
Exactly.
I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that, that the leaders in sparkling wine, and Cap Classique, are really excited about the project.